World Baseball Classic. I mean, I don't know how, it's got to be one of the best sport. It's. I think I tweeted this, and I think I'm going to put this maybe in the thumbnail of the video. Is the World Baseball Classic was maybe the best thing that's happened to baseball since the McGwire Sosa home run race in the '90s. Maybe you could say the 2004 Red Sox. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit biased here being a Red Sox fan, but like I think this was one of the best things that's happened to baseball specifically. I mean, if you want to lump in sports in general, I think it was a phenomenal moment for sports. Like, I think just overall, it was such an exciting tournament. And I mean, even, the round robin games were okay. They weren't, I don't think there was as much, fireworks as there was really in some of the like bracket play. Like we saw the walk-off, which I'm going to say hand up here. I actually fell asleep in the ninth inning, and I didn't see the walk-off because I was, Japan was losing by, I think, a run or two. And no, they were losing by one because they walked off on like a bases clearing first and second. They scored the run, which was unfortunate. I fell asleep and I didn't see it. And so I was just like, oh, okay, so I'm going to go to sleep. USA is going to play Mexico tomorrow. It's going to be a cool North America game. Like we're going to see, the El Tri, I think is what they call it in soccer when USA plays Mexico. But yeah, like I said, unfortunately I fell asleep right at the end of that game. I stayed up and watched it, and then I just, I missed it. But then, you also had the USA versus, I believe it was either Venezuela or Cuba, where Trey Turner hits the grand slam. I mean, that was such a monster hit for Trey Turner there. There were some unfortunate injuries, but it's like, I think the Edwin Diaz injury, that's a freak injury. That's, that could have happened anytime. Obviously celebrating is unfortunate. The Jose Altuve injury, that's unfortunate as well. I mean, he'll be back. I think Nolan Arenado had a similar injury where he got hit in the hand. I don't think it was fractured. I'm not 100% sure, but like, I think when it comes to players within the hobby, I think it helps sports cards and it helps baseball cards because you're getting more eyes on the game. And I think the one thing when it comes to sports cards is that a lot of people associate sports cards with baseball cards. And I think that's sort of a little bit overlooked in the hobby in general. Like if you were to talk to someone who isn't in sports cards and you were to say you're into sports cards, I'd say 9 out of 10 times they're going to say, oh, like baseball cards, like you're into baseball cards. So I think, baseball becoming more popular is going to be very vital when it comes to the growth of the hobby. I think we're seeing Fanatics sort of take over some of Topps' marketing, and Topps is going to be still Topps and Fanatics, but it's Topps, but whatever. Topps is still the only, company that's making baseball cards. So that's obviously important. So I think for the next few years, also, we're not going to see football and basketball come over right away. And I don't know if they're going to be, I guess it'll be interesting to see sort of if when Fanatics takes over the football and basketball licenses, do they create another sports card company, or do they continue with the Topps brand and just come out with Topps football and basketball products? I think that's one question that I definitely have. We'll probably won't have an answer to until, Fanatics starts making these cards. But I think it could be interesting to see like a second or third company within Fanatics come in and start to build another brand within sports cards. Or maybe they buy a brand, like, I don't know, maybe they come in and buy Upper Deck or buy Panini. I don't know if they would do that, but, or they, maybe they buy Leaf or they buy a sports card company, another one. And then that's like the football company or that's the basketball company, which another tweet that I think I'm going to be talking about later on the show that I'm going to be having some instant reaction to is going to be that Topps announced they're going to do a Bowman. Finally, I knew that this was coming, but Topps announced they're going to be doing a Bowman basketball set for college, and it's going to include men's and women's, which I think that means the first Caitlin Clark Bowman card. And actually, I'm just going to look that up really quick because I do want to, as we're talking about this, yeah, it looks like Caitlin Clark is going to have one. I'm surprised that Paige Bucher wasn't in there, but either way, I think, like I said, I think baseball being the top sport or being one of the top sports is going to be extremely important for cards because, like I said, I think the association with baseball cards and sports cards is so intertwined that I think if baseball isn't as popular, I think it's going to hurt cards because just the association is going to almost like die off because people are going to associate the dying game of baseball with potentially the dying art of sports cards. Unfortunately, we'll see if that happens, but I think that's potentially something that could happen down the road if we see baseball slowly start to peter out a little bit. And then another thing that with actually I saw, so I think it's Front Office Sports. They came out with an article today about there's going to be a company streaming all of the minor league games, which is something that I'm a huge fan of. When I was in grad school, I wrote a paper about like how baseball can market their minor league players more to grow the sport. And I think I'm going to actually dive into that. I'm going to look at that article. I'm going to look at the paper that I wrote before I kind of dive into the article. Cause I think, I think it's a massive deal for cards and for prospecting. And we're seeing a lot of good things trending up when it comes to baseball and baseball cards. One thing I think from this tournament that I definitely would like to see is maybe some more in-season tournaments. Like, I don't know if there's a way that they could do. There's probably no way they could do the World Baseball Classic again, but I would love to see like inter-team tournaments. Maybe it's like, I don't know if they would do like, or at least just kind of some of the brainstorming that I was doing is like, I would like to see just regular tournaments, like with all of the teams in them, and then get to these like single elimination or even do like shorter like series, like where they take some of the interleague games that they usually have and they switch those into like tournament games. I don't know how they would be able to promote them and make them more important. Like, I don't know if it's, because they do it with an esports, and that's sort of how I got the concept or ideas. Like esports, essentially they have like splits. So they have like within Call of Duty, which is the esport that I follow, they have like a 5-game season essentially, and then they go into like that brings you to seeding for a tournament, and then the tournament you get a championship. You don't necessarily qualify for like the world championship, like the final tournament, from winning one of these tournaments, but maybe there's a way that, like, I don't know, if you win a tournament, you then get to host the All-Star game, or you get to host the draft, or you get to do something that's kind of cool around these types of tournaments. Because I just think that I feel like there's lightning in a bottle here with the 1-game tournaments. And I feel like baseball, if they were to implement them, I know they're doing a lot of rule changes, but like I said, I just think that baseball itself should figure out a way to implement these 1-game tournaments or these like 1-game elimination finals or something along those lines in the season to bring a little bit more eyeballs onto the sport. Because, like, sure, baseball is interesting because it's one of the only sports. Baseball is one of the only sports that doesn't really have any competition during their season. Like, the middle of the baseball season is in the middle of the summer when there's no hockey, there's no football, there's no basketball, but like somehow they need to figure out a way to cater more towards, or they need to garner more eyeballs when it comes to these games. And it is like the sport that has the most amount of games. So it's like the game itself, like individual games, maybe matter a little bit less than it does within basketball or within hockey. I mean, football, obviously, 16-game season, you're playing once a week, every game, and same with college football. Every game is so important. I just wish there was a way that baseball could figure out how to make their individual games more important. Maybe it's less games. I don't think that the owners would ever do that, unfortunately. Maybe it's in-season tournaments. Maybe it's more like all-star game type things where they do, maybe it's division all-stars, or it's like, I mean, even if it's like they turn, maybe here's an idea. Maybe instead of the all-star game, they do something similar to what like the NHL did, where it is a short tournament, like a single elimination tournament within the divisions. So like they figure out a way, like whatever the top division is, maybe they get a bye or something. And then they figure out a way to do like a short 1-game tournament within the divisions, to kind of create sort of like a postseason. And I don't know, maybe it's like the team that wins then gets it's kind of similar to the All-Star game where the team that wins then gets to be the home team in the World Series. I don't know. I think that's not a terrible concept. I know a lot of people didn't really like it because it seemed like people weren't taking the All-Star game super seriously, but it's like if you were able to figure out, if your team specifically could figure out how to be the home team, maybe that's where they kind of turn things around. The other thing with the World Baseball Classic is that they had the most attendance in the World Baseball Classic history, which is this is I think the 5th or 6th in total. So it's not even like there really has been too many of them, but I would say this year, it probably, based on numbers, it was the most popular tournament that they've ran. So like, I definitely think I think baseball needs to figure out how to take the tournament that they just ran and build it in the MLB season somehow. Because I think that if they were to, like I said, take lightning in a bottle and figure out how to build on this like aura or this like excitement that they had from this tournament and somehow put it into the regular season, that would then drive more eyeballs into, what were meaningless games in like July or meaningless games in like May, June, July timeframe. I think that would be a good way for baseball to kind of spice up the game a little bit more. I think Kamikaze said we're reinventing the wheel, but at the same time, I think that baseball needs a reinventing of the wheel, if I'm going to be completely honest. They're one of the only sports of all the major sports in the United States that hasn't really, like, they've been making changes this year and over the past few years, but up until recently, there have been almost no rule changes to that sport. And I think that they need some rule changes, and I think they need some reinvigorating of the sport in general. So I'll definitely, going into the season, I'll be excited to see who are the top names, and if they're, if it's a Randy Arozarena or if it's Shohei Ohtani. I mean, he's obviously the biggest name probably in the sport. But or Mike Trout, or how these players play once we get into the start of this MLB season coming.